Okay, so let me start with a very simple one. That is, if I'm not sure if you guys know, it's called you say Control D and Control R. That is copying cells to the bottom as well as the right. So, for example, if I have some text here in a cell, so I want to copy this across to multiple rows. So what I can do is I select first the value which I want to copy and then select the range, and I just press Control D, that is D for down. So the same value gets copied across to all the cells. Similarly, I can copy the values to the right as well. So I select the whole range I want to copy and I press Control R. Remember that the first column to be copied is the value you want to copy, right? So I press Control R and the whole thing gets copied across. So that is one of the very useful shortcuts I have learned in Excel. So this is for multiple cells. So if I want to just copy it down to just one cell, I just directly press Control D instead of selecting this and then this. And the same applies to the right as well, like this. I mean, this shortcut is only for copying cells downwards or towards the right. There's no shortcut for left and up. So it's easy to remember, Control D for down and Control R for right. Okay, so it doesn't just copy the values, it's as good as Control C and Control V. It copies everything, including formatting and even formulas as well. For example, if I say I give a format to this first cell, I'll increase the font and I do this and do Control D, all the formatting gets copied across, right? And the same applies to the right as well. That's that. And so there's one quick workaround to avoid doing that. So you can just drag it across and you see a small option bar here. So which says you just fill formatting or fill without formatting. So what I do is fill without formatting. It just copies the value, just the values, not the formats. Or if you want to just copy the format and not the value, so drop it, select fill formatting only. So it just copies the format across. So you can type anything in the same format. Okay, so, and the same is applicable to the right as well. So that's fine. So I'm going to just write a formula here. So I'm just going to type, say, row, which gives me the row number. And if I drag, it's going to copy the formula, not the values. It copies the formula. So you can see it shows the row number of each cell and the same. Just going to copy the column formula across, right? And that's on dragging. So the next one I wanted to show is some places I've noticed that people struggle with adding multiple lines inside the same cell. For example, I type something here. For example, and suppose I want to add another line to it. I want to go to the next line. If I press enter, it goes to the next cell, which I don't want to happen. So what I do is I go to the edit mode and I press Alt enter. So it just goes to the next cell. Sorry, so it's the next line. I can type whatever I want there. And you can type how many other rows you want in the same cell. So that's also one of the things which is quite useful. Now coming to the next topic called formatting. So I just wanted to cover the different types of formats, data types, which is supported by Excel. So by default, if you notice, if I type any text, it is auto aligned to the left. And if I type any number without any alphabets inside it, it considers that as a number. So that is automatically detected by Excel. So what you can do to this is you can play around with the formatting. For example, you can add decimal places to it. fixed number of decimal places, and you can, what it does is if you have more, if you want just two decimal places, it's going to just number, going to just every 3 digits, right? So another interesting one is currency. So you can define a currency. This is more applicable for when you have Excel sheets for invoicing, accounting, and other stuff. So you have multiple currencies available in this list, including rupee. So if you scroll all the way to the middle of the list, you see rupee. So English, India, what is select, and you can see this small rupee symbol added to the value. The value doesn't change. I can just type any number I want. And when I press enter, it's just going to display this rupee symbol next to it. And all the other rules of formatting still hold the same. You can still define your decimal places and all that. So coming back to the formats. So you have all these date time formats. I'm sure you would have gone through all this already, percentage as well as that. But the one I'll be showing you today is custom formatting, which is quite interesting because you can define what format you want to show. For example, you have a date, say, so this is a date in some specific default format, but I want to format to a different format. For example, I want the date to be shown as the weekday space date hyphen the month and the year. Right? I want to convert this to show in this format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to custom, and I can define what format I want in this. So first I want the weekday to be displayed in full, not just the 3-character code. So what you start doing is, if you type 1 character D, that's for the date, right? If I continue doing that, 3 digits, it's going to take a 3-character short code for the week name, right? If you continue doing that, it's going to, if you add 4 Ds, it considers that as the full name of the week, right? Space, I want a 2-digit date. So that is, if I say a single D, what it means is if the date is between 1 and 9, it's just going to show that 1-digit number. It's going to remove that preceding 0, right? So if I add 2 Ds, it's going to show 0. It's going to show 0, 1, 0, 2 like that. So I'm going to say DD hyphen, then comes month. So a single character M will give you the month in single digit. It's going to remove the preceding 0. Another 0, it's going to, sorry, another M is going to show 0 mandatorily in 2 digits, but I want as a 3-digit code. So I'm going to say 3 M's here, which is going to show me the name of the month in 3-character code. If I want the full name of the month, I'm going to add one more M to it. It will give me the full name of the month. So I'll just say MMM hyphen, I want the year. So for year, if I add 1 Y or 2 Ys, it's going to show just the last 2 digits. So here it's 2019. So if I add 3 or 4 Ys, it's going to show 4-digit year code. So if I say, okay, I got the date in this required format. I can play around with this. So if I want the full month, I'm going to say 4 M's and just press OK. It will display the whole month name. Or I want the name, I mean the weekday in just a 3-character code. I'm going to say 3 Ds in the beginning. Say OK. It will just say Wed, not Wednesday. Right, and it's not just that, you can add time to it as well. So if I say 10, 23, 36 p.m. It will not show that because I've not defined that in my format. So what I'll do is I'll define the time as well. So the first comes as hours, that's character H. So here you need to be careful if you want to show the time in 12-hour format or 24-hour format. So if you want to show in 12-hour format, give a small h, that is in lowercase, colon, So capital M, remember small m stands for month and capital M is for the minutes, and seconds, that's S again. So I want to show AM or PM, so AM/PM. You can see the formatting here. If I say okay, it's going to show the time as well in the format I need, right? So if I want to change this to a 24-hour format, I'm going to remove this AM, PM. Instead, change this to uppercase in capital H. It's going to convert this into a 24-hour format. You can see 22 hours here, right? So you can even like add dates to it. For example, if I add a formula saying this +1, it's going to show, it's going to add 1 day to this date. So it's moved to Thursday, but the time remains the same. Because how Excel works is it saves this as a number in the background, not in this format. To show you that, I'm going to copy and paste this and change the format to a number. So you can see this is a number, but it's the same as this. It's only the difference in the formatting, how it's going to show up to the users. If I say equal to this, but change this to a short date, it's going to show the date. It's going to convert this to a date. So if I say, if I add this, if I change the number a bit, it's going to update the date here. Okay. So this is, you can even add time. So +1 by default adds 1 day. Plus if I say plus 1.5, it's going to add 1.5 days. Just for simplicity, I'll just say plus 0.5, but it's going to add 1 day to it. So the time changes from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. and it is moved to the next day. So this is how you can like handle dates in Excel. Okay, so that was the date and time formatting. And if you, there are a couple of other formulas as well. Like if you want the current date and time, there's a formula called now. So what it does is it displays the current date and time as per your system settings, right? You can again play around this plus. If you want tomorrow's time, so it's now +1. So this is tomorrow's date plus the same time tomorrow, 15:21. So that's now. And if you want another useful function is called a weekday. So that returns the which day of the week is it. For example, if I say weekday of, I select this date, for example, that gives me 4. So how this weekday function works by default is it returns a value from, between 1 to 7. So starting from Sunday, that's the default. So Sunday is taken as 1, Monday is 2, Tuesday is 3, and Wednesday is 4. So if I change this date to 28, it's going to update this to 5, which means Thursday. That's the default. So if you see this here, the first parameter is the value. It's going to change. It's going to refer. The second parameter is a return type. For example, as I said, it's going to return a value between 1 and 7. But if you want to consider Monday as the first day of the week instead of Sunday, you just pass a second parameter called 2. So by default, it's 1. How Excel considers this, by default, it takes this value as 1. That is Sunday to Saturday. So if you change this to 2, it's going to consider Monday to Sunday instead. So it will count Thursday as day number 4. Yeah, so I change this to Monday, it's going to return 1. So you can take this up a notch. There is an option where you can return values from 0 to 6 instead of 1 to 7, but I'm not going to do that in this session. You can play around with this. Okay, so that was a few things around date. So there are other like useful functions I want to show around text. So there is one useful function called concatenate, which just adds 2 strings together. So for example, if I have the first name and the last name, I want to concatenate this to show the full name. So equal to concatenate. So Excel shows the suggestion as you go on typing. Concatenate, select the values you want to concatenate, separated by commas, this and this. So it's going to show me the full name, right? This example of a concatenate function. So if I want to add a space in between the first name and the last name, I'm just going to add a space as the second parameter and second name as the third parameter. So it just adds a space in between. So the number of parameters you can pass is unlimited. You can pass as many parameters you want. It will just concatenate the whole thing and display. But I want to split this into first name and the second name, right? I'm going to delete these two columns for now. Let me add a couple of more names. Just okay. So now our challenge is to split this into the first name and the second name. So how this is going to work is, this is quite challenging because the length of the first name across different names here is different. So here, for example, it is 7 characters, but here it is just 3 characters. So we can't like have one particular simple formula for this. I'll show you an example. So mid. So mid function basically returns a substring from a string. So how it works is you uh, select the cell, select the string, comma, the starting number. If you want to start from the first character itself, so just say 1. And the number of characters I want this. So let me say 4. So it just returns me the first 4 characters from this text, starting from the first digit, first character. So if I change this to 2, starting num as 2, it starts from the second character O, and it still returns me 4 characters. So that's how the mid function works. It basically returns a substring from a string. So now we are going to use this and another function called find. I'm going to explain that later. So mid of, I want just the first name from this string, comma, starting num is number 1, and the number of characters. So that varies from this list. So I can't just say 7. It still works for this value, but it's not going to work for the other values, because here it's turning the whole thing, not just the first name. So it's important to find a pattern in such cases. For example, after every first name, there's a space. So all you need to do is find the position of the space and return the substring only up to that space. So that's how you can find the first name. So what I'm going to use another function called find. So what this does is it finds the position of a string inside another string, right? For example, here, I'm going to find the position of space in this text. So it says 8. So that means the position of space in this string is 8. So if I just drag this down, it's going to say the same thing here. The position of space is 4. So now I have a way to identify where I want to end to look for my string. To find the first name, so what I'm going to do is the starting num will be the same, but the number of characters is going to be depending on the find function. So find, I'm going to add a function within a function, find space in this text. I'm going to say -1 because I don't want the space to be included in my first name. So I'm going to say -1. So that is up to 7 characters. There you go. So it's returning my first name properly. And if I drag the same formula, you can see it works for this value as well. It's returning just A and not the whole thing, right? Similarly, let's find the second name. This is a bit more complicated because we don't know the starting position for this. So let's start doing it. Mid. In this text, starting num is I want to start from the position after the space. So that is again find space in this text. I will say +1 because I don't want space to be included in my second name, comma. Now the number of characters, again, this is going to vary. So how do we find the number of characters? So now we are going to use another function called len. That gives me the length of a string. So if I say len, it gives me the total length of this string, that is 14 characters. So I'm just going to drag this. So I'm going to make use of this to find the number of characters here, because here I want, for example, 6 characters. That is nothing but length minus the find. So I'm going to make use of that. So mid this string, starting num is again find the position of the space in this text, +1 because I want to avoid the space. Now the number of characters, I want to say 6. That's nothing but length of this minus the position of the space again. So it's find within this text, right? I'm going to close the function. There you go. So this is giving me my second name. So let me drag this to check if it is working. Yeah, perfect. Let me check this with a couple of other names. Say, I'm going to just do Control D. It's going to copy the formula down. Perfect. So these are just some examples of some useful string functions. So I'm just going to repeat. Find is nothing but it finds the position of a substring within a string. And if it cannot find the substring, it's going to return -1, right? Then the length function gives the length of a string, and then the mid function, which returns a substring from a string. So which takes 3 parameters. One is the text itself, the main string, the starting character, and the number of strings. So that is some useful string functions. So there are other functions as well, like for example, if you want to convert everything to uppercase equal to upper, so it just converts everything to uppercase. Similarly, there's a lower function as well, lower of this text, it converts everything to lowercase. There is another function called proper. What it does is in case of wrong capitalization, say for example, I've just messed up with the capitalization. So what I'm going to do is proper, select this text. So what it does is it converts everything to lowercase, but it changes all the first characters of every word to the uppercase. So that's the proper function, which I have found very useful in so many occasions. So that's another string function. Coming to some other examples of functions. One of the very important one was the VLOOKUP function. Okay, so for example, I have a set of data here, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to find, okay, let's use a different example. So you have a table, designation. So you have like 3 employees, name, the designation is CEO, test manager, and exploratory tester. Okay, so we have this table. So what I want to do is when I enter the employee number, I want to fetch the name and the designation of that employee, right? So for example, if I say employee number 1, so I want to find the name and the designation. So I'm going to make use of a VLOOKUP, that is something like vertical lookup. There's also another function called horizontal lookup, that is HLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is because we are searching across columns, hence the name VLOOKUP, vertical lookup. So VLOOKUP, bracket. The first parameter is the value you want to search, right? So this is the value I want to search. So I'm going to give a reference to that, comma. Then the table itself. So I'm going to select the whole table, or just the columns I want. I'm going to ignore the headings. So that's the table, comma, the column index. So here in this reference table, the first column is column 1. This is column number 2, and it goes on, right? So I'm going to say column 2 because I want the name, comma. The last parameter is whether I want an exact match or an approximate match. So I want an exact match in this case. So I'm going to say false. That's it. So you can see it is returning the name here. So if I say 2, it returns B, and same with C, right? So that is a very simple example of a VLOOKUP. I'm going to expand this to designation. I'm going to just copy the formula across, but I'm just expanding the reference range to include column C as well. But here I want the designation, that is column number 3 from the referring column. So I'm going to say 3. So it returns me the designation of the employee. So I'm going to say 1. Yeah, it's going to return the values. Yeah, there you go. So this is a very simple example of a VLOOKUP function. Okay, so things get complicated when you have when the referring table itself is small, but you are using VLOOKUP for large range. So I have just set up an example here where we have a small table where this is the level of an employee, and this defines the salary of the employee, right? So here I'm going to have a different list of employees, level and salary, or let me say level here. Okay, so I'm going to set different levels randomly. Uh, 3, 4. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so here I have a list of 7 employees. I want to find the salary of each employee using VLOOKUP against this data, this mapping. So I have a mapping of level against salary. So what I'm going to do is start with the function equal to VLOOKUP of this level in this table here. Okay, and I want this second column, so I'm going to say the next parameters 2, and I want an exact match, so I'm going to say false. Yeah, it's returning the correct value, that's fine, but things go wrong when you drag this formula across, because what's going to happen is when you drag something down, Excel is going to change the reference itself, because whenever in a formula you have a reference to another cell, Excel by default updates it as in when you drag it. So if you see here, it's D22, D23, 4, it's going to update that, which is right, because for this formula, I want this reference, but for this formula, I want this reference, which is still right. But the referring table, it's going to lower the reference as in when I drag the formula down. So here it says refer to data A8 to B12. So that is A8 to B12, which is wrong, which is, it's not referring to this table at all. So what I want to do is I want to freeze this reference. I don't want this reference to change when I drag the formula down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a dollar symbol before A and 2. So it's going to freeze that value, and same with B and 6. So I'm going to say $A, $2 to $B, $6. So it's going to freeze that reference. So that is $2, I'm sorry, A2 to B6. It's going to freeze this reference. So now if I drag it down, it gives me the right values. So as you can see, it has not updated the reference itself, the table reference, but still it has updated this value, which is still right. Okay, so this is a way you can freeze the referring, you can freeze the reference to another cell when you're dragging formulas. So if you have noticed the stepathon sheet, this VLOOKUP function is extensively used, especially on the leaderboard. Yeah, so that's on VLOOKUP. And now there's another problem. So now if I say in this data, I can see there are 5 levels. So now if I have a level 6, so it's going to return an error, right? So it's going to return an error because it cannot find value 6 in this table. So that's why Excel returns an error, right? So there's a way to handle this. So there are 2 ways. Either you handle this itself to avoid the user from not entering invalid values, or give a meaningful error message. So right, so to do that, whenever there is an error due to a formula, so there's a function called if error. So how that works is I'm going to surround this entire formula with the if error function. Okay, so I'll start with if error, and I'm going to pass this formula itself as the first parameter. Okay, it just takes 2 parameters. So the first parameter is the formula itself, and comma, the second parameter is the text you want to display in case of an error, right? So you can say not found. So that's the text I want to show in case there is an error. There you go. So it shows employee not found. If I still give a valid number, say 2, it still returns me the salary. But if I give some invalid value, it's going to say employee not found. So this is applicable for any formula which there's a chance of returning an invalid value, error message. So that's how you surround this with an if error function and add a meaningful message, which is user friendly. The user can understand what it means. So that is the if error function, which is very useful. Coming to the next one, that is data validation. So as I said, you can either give a meaningful message here or handle this this column itself to avoid the user from entering a wrong value. So what you can do is I'll just revert this back to the right. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to add some validations on this so that the user cannot enter invalid values. I want the user to enter only values between 1 and 5. So I'm going to select this range where I want to add the validation, go to data, and there's something called data validation. So if you click that, it opens up this window, and by default, it is any value. It accepts any value without displaying any error. So if you expand this, you can see a list of options. I'm going to say whole number between 1 and 5. I'm going to define this. So say okay. So now it allows me to enter any value between 1 and 5. But if I enter a bigger number, it's going to throw me an error saying the value you entered is not valid. So it does not allow the user to enter that value at all, right? It can be anything. And anything which is not in between 1 and 5, it's going to give me the same error, right? So that is one way of handling. We can take this up a notch. I can say a list. So where I can define the list of values the user can select, and this is going to add a drop down next to the cell. So the user can select a value from the drop down itself. I'm going to define the list of valid values separated by commas and say okay. And you can see a drop down here. It allows me to enter only that. So if I enter anything else, it's again going to not allow me to enter that value. This is another way of ensuring that the user enters only the expected values, right? That is data validation. Sorry. There's another way. For example, there are, as you can see, there are different cells here where it's referring, which has the reference. So for example, if you have the, suppose I have employee number as one of the value here where the user is going to enter some value, right? And you may be using this in so many different screens. I'm going to just add 3 different instances for that. So here you might say, you might define the validation as a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because there are 7 employees, and it's going to allow me to just enter these values. And I'll just create a copy of that just to show that it can be used in different screens, right? So now the challenge is we are referring to this list from so many other sources, right? So now if a new employee gets added to the list, right? So there's a challenge that you have to go and change the data validation of all these cells wherever it's referring, because it still allows me only up to 7. It doesn't show me 8. So the hard way to do it is go to each cell, add 8 to the list, right? It comes here. So instead, you can, there is another way of handling this in a smart way. It's called a name list. So what you can do is you can define this as a list of names in Excel. So the shortcut is Control F3. So I'm not sure how to go through the menu. So the shortcut is Control F3. So where you can define uh, the list of employees. So what I'm going to do is new. I'll just say employee numbers. I'm going to copy this because I need that later. And here I'm going to select this range because this is the list of employee numbers. So I'm going to say OK and close. What I can do here is in all my drop downs, I can either give a reference directly like this. So it's still going to show values here, or I can add the data validation itself. So you can see equal to number, employee numbers, that is the name of the list we just created, and just say okay. So it's going to update everywhere, right? It's 8 here. I can see there's 8 here as well. Even here it's 8. So now I'm going to add a new employee, right? So it doesn't add here by default. I just need to update the name. Instead of changing in every screen, I'm going to just change this once in my name. So I'm going to say Control F3 again. I'm going to update this reference to include the new employee. Done. So now if you see in all these drop downs, 9 is automatically in the list. You don't have to go to each drop down and update the list again, because they're all referring to the same name list. So that's the advantage, right? So that was on data validations. Let me go to the next topic, that's conditional formatting. So as the name suggests, if you want to format a particular cell or a range of cells based on some condition, so you can do that in Excel. So for example,
Gautam, just to pause you for a minute, guys, if you have questions till what he has covered, you could raise your hand on the right bottom corner and unmute your mic and ask your question, or you can use the chat window, type out the question that you have. And but if you're all okay, then and no questions, everything is clear, then Gautam could go ahead.
any questions, guys?
Any questions, or do we proceed? Okay, looks like everyone's okay. There's nobody
Okay,
who's
fine.
raised their hands. Okay, Gautam, go ahead.
Okay, cool, fine. So okay, so as I was saying, conditional formatting is a way where you can format cells or a range of cells based on some values. For example, I'm going to take this. I want to highlight, or I want to like give a different format for any level which is 4 and above, right? So for 4 and 5, I want to show this in, say, blue color, for example. So I'm going to select this cell here just as an example. So if you go to home menu and conditional formatting, new rule. So there are so many ways you can define this. You can have a scale. So based on a value between a range, it's going to show the color accordingly, or a cell value between, I want greater than or equal to 5, right? So sorry, 4. So I'm going to say cell value greater than or equal to 4, and I'm going to set the format to say bold. I'm going to add some background color to it. I'm going to change the font. Why can't I change the font? Okay, anyway. Yeah, as you see, it changed the formatting. I'm just going to zoom in. So if I lower this to 3, it's going to remove that format. And if I say 4, it's going to bring that format back again. So this is a way of formatting based on a condition. You can add as many conditions you want. So if you go to manage rules, you can add as many rules you want in this, and it will show the format accordingly. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. So I'm just going to delete this. So now I want to extend that format to the whole row instead of just that one cell, right? So I want to expand it to the whole row. For example, if the level of the employee is 4 and above, I want to highlight the whole row, not just that particular cell. Okay, so uh, there's a way of doing that. I'm going to say new rule, and I'm going to skip to the last one where you can add your own formula here. So this gives you more control on defining your formula. Okay, so here I'm going to say, sorry. So I'm going to select this range. I'm going to new rule. I'm going to go to this. Now what I do is I write the formula for the first row itself, right? And Excel automatically copies that formula across to all the rows uh, uh, because I've selected the whole range here. Okay, so I'm going to define for the first cell, to be honest. So what I do is here, it always starts with equal to. If the level, that is D22, that's the reference of the cell D22 for the first row. So if D22 greater than or equal to 4, right? So this is the condition I have written. So I'm going to define the same format or a different format, bold. Okay. Yeah. So there's a problem here, right? So it did not select the whole row, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a dollar here because I want to freeze the column and not the row. I'm going to freeze the column because I want to copy the format across the whole row, right? I'm going to add a dollar to next to D. There you go. So it is highlighting the whole row and not just that cell. So let me check if it works on the other cells as well. Yes. Yeah, that's working. So it highlights the whole row because I have frozen the formula for on the column. So it's going to copy across the whole column, not the row. Right? This is a way to highlight the whole row here. You can expand this formula, like if you want to add multiple conditions. So you can say, for example, if the level is say 4 and above, and the designation is CEO, only then show some format. So let me expand to that. So there's a function called and function. So you pass all the parameters which return true or false, and it's going to return, the whole function is going to return true or false based on the and condition. So the first parameter is if, I'm just going to delete this for simplicity. I'm going to do that again. Yeah, so and so the same formula as the beginning, $D22 greater than or equal to 4, comma, and so the next condition is if column C has the value of CEO, right? So same as the before, $C22 equal to CEO. Right. So here for the AND function, I have passed two parameters which individually return true or false, and is going to return true or false based on whether both are true or not. So I'm going to set the format again. So nowhere it is true. So here, let me say 4. Yeah, there you go. Let me change this to something else. Yeah. So this is like an AND function inside the condition formatting. Okay, right. So that was on conditional formatting, unless there is any question from anybody. No? Okay, great. So the next thing I wanted to show is cell protection. I'm not sure if you guys have used that. So cell protection, as the name suggests, you want to protect a couple of cells in the sheet and you don't want others to edit it. So what you do is you lock down those cells and keep only the available cells for editing for others. By default, everything is, I mean, in case of shared workbooks, all the cells by default are available for everyone to edit, but you can lock it down by doing this. So you select the whole sheet by selecting Control A and press Control 1 again, which brings up this format. Go to protection and it says locked, which is right. You just keep it locked. That's fine. I just want to check that. Now I want users to edit only this cell, not any other cell. Okay, so I'm going to select that cell. I'm going to say unlocked. Okay, that's fine. It's still not locked because I've just set the data. So now there's a way of locking this sheet. If you go to review tab and protect sheet, right? If you go to protect sheet, you select unlocked cells. That is only, it allows only the unlocked cells to be editable. So I'm going to keep that as selected and press OK. So now if I try to press anywhere else, I'm clicking as I'm speaking, but I can't edit it. The cell does, the control doesn't flow to any other cell. It's only this cell here. So this is the only cell I can edit. I can't edit any other cell right now because it is protected, right? So that's one way of protecting your sheet. So you can unprotect it just by a click. So the whole sheet becomes unprotected. You can set a password to it. Say, I'm going to say test123 and protect the sheet. Confirm password, test123. Okay, so now I have set a password. And when I share this workbook with others, and if they try to unprotect the sheet, it's going to ask for the password. It's not going to allow editing the workbook at all. I mean, the sheet at all without the password, right? If, yeah, so that makes it editable. So that's one way of protecting the sheet. I mean, any feedback, guys, on the session? Any different way of you want me to do it, or was everything okay?
Hi, Gautam. That
Hey.
was a good session. There's a lot of options in Excel, which I didn't know there were so many things that we
Who's
could do.
this? Your
This
name?
is Madhuri Deepa.
Hey, it's saying hi Madhuri. This is iPhone. It says iPhone, so I was not able to catch you. Okay, how are you, Madhuri?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, just one thing which I wanted to know was like I am using a MacBook currently. Will these commands remain the same in MacBook? I will have to try all this.
This remains the same,
Okay.
unless I mean people use Google Sheets nowadays, but I'm not sure how many of these functions and formulas work in Google Sheets, because that's why
Okay.
I have been using MS Excel throughout my career so far. So that's why I give the session in Excel. But Google Sheets, I'm not sure how many of these are supported there. So you just
Okay,
can.
cool.
I'm sure VLOOKUP is supported. I've done that.
Okay.
Most of the basic functions are still supported across Google Sheets and OS as well, even in MacBook.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. I'll give a try and I'll let you know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else who has questions? Definitely can take questions.
Hello. Hey Deepa, Sushmita here.
Yes, Shushmita, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic.
So Gautam,
Yeah.
if at all you're doing the next session,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the recruitment team, right? We have a lot of sorting and no arrangement of data in certain way,
Okay.
or no transporting of data from one Excel sheet to another Excel sheet, or retrieving the data. These scenarios, no, usually we do a lot and we struggle a lot. So
Okay.
if we have anything which could minimize this, that would actually help practically.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. I can cover that topic as well next week.
Yeah.
Do you, before that, Sushmita, would you like to send him some kind of a dummy data that and with some relevant questions on what you spoke so that he could have enough time to prepare?
Sure, I could do that. Yeah.
If you can email it to Gautam, that'll be great.
Yeah. Sure.
Anyone else that who has questions here? I think that's about it. Anybody on the chat window? Not that I can see. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, so that's thank you guys for attending. I hope it was useful. I'm sure like some of these you might have already used it, but I'm sure like some new things you learned today. So as Sushmita suggested, next session I'm going to cover the sorting as well with complex data, and I'm going to walk you through macros, which is very interesting. So where you can automate some stuff through code. So I'll see you guys next week.